Tonight, headlines are shaking the world. Japan and China in a tense standoff over Taiwan. The eyes of millions are glued to screens as breaking news flashes across every channel, and the world holds its breath. This is not just another diplomatic spat, it's a moment that could redefine the balance of power in Asia. It is dawn in Tokyo, but the city does not sleep. Sirens wail through the early morning haze, echoing off the skyscrapers. Near the Japanese Ministry of Defense, emergency vehicles line the streets, their lights flashing urgently. News helicopters buzz overhead, capturing every moment from above as the city braces for what could come next. The faces of soldiers and police are stern and focused as they move swiftly through the bustling city streets. Crowds gather in public squares, their eyes fixed on massive outdoor screens. Every update is met with anxious silence, as people try to make sense of the rapidly unfolding events. The air is thick with tension and worry. In the subways, commuters exchange nervous glances, their usual routines disrupted by the uncertainty. On the streets, conversations are hushed, and the mood is somber. The entire city seems to be holding its breath, waiting for the next development. Just across the East China Sea, the situation is escalating. Chinese fighter jets have been spotted flying dangerously close to Japanese airspace, their presence lighting up radar screens in command centers. Japanese air defense personnel work around the clock, eyes glued to monitors, ready to respond at a moment's notice. Out at sea, near the disputed Senkaku Islands, Japanese Coast Guard officers scan the horizon with binoculars. Fishing boats bob in the choppy waters, while Chinese vessels loom in the distance, their numbers growing by the hour. The standoff is not just in the air, but on the water as well. The situation is fast-moving and unpredictable. Military vehicles race through Tokyo's streets, while newsrooms scramble to keep up with the latest developments. In both Japan and China, crowds react with a mix of fear, anger, and uncertainty as rumors and facts swirl together. This is not just another flare-up between two rivals. This time, leaders are making bold, unprecedented moves. High-level meetings are underway with diplomats and politicians from both sides facing off across tense negotiating tables. Every statement to the press is carefully measured as the world watches for any sign of escalation or compromise. The world is paying close attention. International newsrooms are on high alert, and headlines about the Japan-China standoff dominate front pages from New York to London to Sydney. Analysts debate possible outcomes, and governments around the globe prepare for the potential fallout. As the sun rises over Tokyo, the city is filled with a sense of anticipation and unease. People look out over the skyline, wondering what the future holds. Are we on the brink of a new era in Asia, one defined by conflict or by a fragile peace? Only time will tell, but tonight, the world is watching, and history is being written before our eyes. The Tokyo skyline glows with alert messages, casting an uneasy light over the city. These warnings are not just routine. They signal a heightened sense of alert that everyone can feel, from the bustling city center to the quiet suburbs. The atmosphere is tense, as if the city itself is holding its breath, waiting for what might come next. Just days ago, what was supposed to be a routine military drill in the East China Sea suddenly escalated. The world watched as military ships and fighter jets from both sides maneuvered dangerously close to each other, their movements tracked by satellites and news agencies around the globe. What began as a show of strength quickly turned into a near confrontation, raising alarms far beyond the region. According to reports, Japanese fighter jets scrambled at a moment's notice to intercept Chinese planes that crossed a sensitive military boundary line. The encounter was tense, with pilots on both sides making split-second decisions that could have changed the course of history. These close calls are becoming more frequent, and each one adds to the growing sense of unease. On both sides, nerves are frayed. In control rooms and military bases, personnel monitor radar screens with intense focus, knowing that a single mistake could have serious consequences. The pressure is immense and the stakes are higher than ever. Why does this matter now? The answer is simple: the world is more connected than ever. And what happens here can ripple across continents in an instant. Newsrooms buzz with updates, and people gather around screens in public spaces, anxious for the latest developments. In 2026, Asia is the world's economic engine. Cities like Tokyo and Shanghai drive global growth, their financial districts humming with activity. The prosperity of millions depends on the stability of this region. Any conflict here could disrupt global trade on a massive scale. From electronics and cars to food and energy, the flow of goods that powers the world economy passes through these ports and factories. Even a brief disruption could send shockwaves through supply chains everywhere. People everywhere remember how supply chains snapped just a few years ago, leaving empty shelves and uncertainty in their wake. Investors are worried, watching stock prices fluctuate with every new headline. The memory of past disruptions is still fresh, and no one wants to see history repeat itself. Families in Japan and China, even those living thousands of miles from the front lines, feel the anxiety. Parents worry about their children's future, and communities brace for the unknown. The tension is not just political, it's deeply personal for millions of ordinary people. But it's more than economics. This is about national pride, about history, and about the stories each country tells itself. High-level meetings and military parades are reminders that both sides are determined to stand their ground. The rivalry between Japan and China is rooted in pride, territory, and a long, complicated history. Disputed islands and old grievances fuel passionate debates among politicians and citizens alike, making compromise difficult. Each side insists it is only protecting its interests, presenting their actions as defensive and justified. Official statements and press conferences reinforce their positions, while military patrols along disputed borders continue day and night. Yet, with every new incident, the risk of miscalculation grows. Each close encounter brings Japan and China closer to a line that no one truly wants to cross, a line where words and warnings may no longer be enough to prevent disaster. That's why the world is watching now, hoping that cooler heads will prevail before it's too late. For decades, Japan has been recognized worldwide for its unique approach to national security, rooted in its post-war peace constitution. This commitment to pacifism has shaped the country's identity and foreign policy since the end of World War II, making Japan a symbol of peace and stability in East Asia. Central to this identity is Article 9 of the Japanese Constitution, which explicitly renounces war and prohibits Japan from maintaining traditional armed forces. For generations, this clause kept Japan's military ambitions firmly in check, limiting its forces to strictly defensive roles. However, in just the last 2 years, a dramatic transformation has begun to take place. The world around Japan is changing rapidly, and so too is the nation's defense strategy. Under the leadership of Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi, the Japanese government argues that the old rules, once seen as unbreakable, no longer fit the realities of today's security environment. New threats demand new responses. A growing number of Japanese citizens now view China as the primary security concern. News coverage and public opinion polls reflect rising anxiety about China's expanding military power and assertive actions in the region. In response, the government has sharply increased defense spending, marking the largest military budget in Japan's post-war history. Investments are being made in advanced missile systems, cyber defense units, and cutting-edge stealth fighter jets, all designed to strengthen Japan's ability to respond to new and evolving threats. These upgrades signal a clear shift toward a more proactive defense posture. Defense officials now speak openly about the need for active deterrence. This means not only defending Japan's own territory, but also being prepared to support allies, especially if a crisis erupts over Taiwan or elsewhere in the region. This represents a profound shift from Japan's post-war past, when the nation's focus was almost entirely on self-defense and avoiding entanglement in foreign conflicts. To support this new strategy, Japan is also revisiting its legal framework. Lawmakers are reviewing decades-old laws to determine how the military can operate in today's complex security environment. In Parliament, heated debates are underway about whether to grant the military greater freedom to act in emergencies, both at home and abroad. These discussions are reshaping the boundaries of Japan's defense policy. Not everyone agrees with these changes. Critics warn that loosening restrictions could drag Japan into foreign wars and undermine the pacifist principles that have defined the nation for generations. Public protests and lively debates reflect deep divisions in Japanese society. Yet supporters argue that Japan has little choice. With China growing bolder each day and regional tensions on the rise, they believe a stronger, more flexible defense strategy is essential to safeguard Japan's future and maintain peace in East Asia. Last month, Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi stood before reporters and made a stunning announcement. Japan will not stand by if Taiwan is attacked. The security of Taiwan means the security of Japan, she declared. Her words sent a shockwave through Asia. For years, Japan kept quiet about Taiwan. Now, Takaichi's government says it is time to speak up. She insists that if China moves on Taiwan, Japan must help defend democracy. Takaichi also called for stronger ties with the United States and other allies. Her statement was cheered by leaders in Taipei and Washington, but it was seen as a direct challenge in Beijing. It marked a turning point, a line in the sand that Japan had never drawn so clearly before. China reacted fast and hard. Within hours of Takaichi's speech, Beijing condemned her remarks as, well, a dangerous provocation. The Chinese government summoned Japan's ambassador for a heated protest. State media called Japan a pawn of the West. China imposed new economic sanctions on Japanese tech and car companies. Factories in Shanghai and Shenzhen slowed as Japanese parts were blocked at ports. Stock markets trembled. Meanwhile, Chinese naval ships and fighter jets conducted drills near the Senkaku Islands and Taiwan Strait, sending a clear warning. Diplomats traded barbs at the United Nations. The crisis deepened as both sides refused to back down. Each move by one was matched by the other, raising fears of a miscalculation that could spark real conflict. Japan did not blink. Within days, Tokyo announced its largest defense budget in history. Billions of yen were pledged for new submarines, missile defense systems, and drones. Parliament raced to pass new laws making it easier for Japan to join collective defense actions with allies. Japan also reached out to old and new partners. Australia, India, and South Korea joined joint naval drills. The United States pledged more troops and missile systems for Japanese bases. Japan's leaders said these steps were necessary, not optional, to preserve peace in the region. This rapid military buildup is historic for Japan. It sends a message: Japan is ready to defend itself and its friends, but it also risks fueling an arms race in Asia, as neighbors respond in kind. On the streets of Tokyo, Osaka, and Sapporo, opinions are changing. Polls show a sharp rise in support for a stronger military. Young people, once skeptical, now say they trust the government to protect the nation. Town halls and TV debates buzz with talk of patriotism and worry about the future. Yet not everyone agrees. Some older citizens remember the horrors of war. Peace activists protest outside parliament, calling for dialogue, not more weapons. Still, the mood has shifted. More and more Japanese accept that the world is less safe, and Japan must be ready. Social media is alive with debate. Hashtags like "Stand with Japan" and "No More War" trend daily. People post photos of soldiers' ships and protests. The nation is awake, alert, and anxious about what comes next. The United States, Japan's closest ally, is front and center. President Harris called Takaichi to pledge support. U.S. warships have joined Japanese patrols near Okinawa. Washington warns China to de-escalate and respect international law. Military and intelligence officials from both nations talk daily. Other countries are watching nervously. South Korea urges calm but joins some drills. Australia voices strong support for Japan. Taiwan's government thanks Tokyo but fears it will be the front line. North Korea, meanwhile, issues threats and launches more missile tests. ASEAN nations face a dilemma: side with the United States and Japan, or stay neutral to avoid angering China. The region holds its breath. Any misstep could draw the whole world into crisis. Tonight the lights burn late in Tokyo, Beijing, and Washington. Diplomats race to find off-ramps, generals review plans and maps, citizens hope for peace but brace for the unknown. Will Japan and China find a way back from the brink, or is a new arms race and risk of war now the new normal? Both nations say they want peace, but neither will back down. The East China Sea is tense, and the world is watching. For now, headlines will keep coming. The future of Asia, and perhaps the world, may be decided by what happens next.